Hello guys and welcome to Mark Tully the Vurnal, a spoken journal where we talk about real life situations, mental health and personal development, tools that you can use to overcome them and reach your full potential. Today is a day that's been a long time coming. My friend Mario, who I met at Speakers Institute, a professional speaking improvement course, which was lots of fun, and we were just talking about it before this podcast here and a little briefing, that we really took away the people that we met was the best thing, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, yeah.
Yep. And Mario he's a man who's, just full of energy and full of life. And whenever you're around him, you really do absorb that and get a lot of positivity from that. He's a brilliant chap, and I'm very glad I met him. His outlook and attitude for life is one to be admired by everybody, in my opinion. And yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into this podcast. Mario is also a running coach from Health Etica. And if you'd like to tell people first, actually, before your normal job, is that how it works? Normal job, standard job, boring job?
Good question, yeah.
The word Health Etica, there's a story behind that. Could you tell us more about that, please?
So originally I'm Swiss. So my parents are Swiss. I was born in South Africa to Swiss parents. So that immediately gave me dual nationality. I'm also Australian now over time, but that's a different story. But yeah. So the World Health Etica is comprised of Health Etica, which is the Latin word for Switzerland. So if anybody who's ever been to Switzerland sees there's a CH on the back of Swiss cars, like in England, in Scotland, you have the GB, and in Scotland, you have Ecos and whatever, and in France. So it's the Latin word for Switzerland is Confederatio Helveticum. So, and obviously it nearly matches up with health. So I thought as a Swiss boy, we'll match that up and marry that up. And now it's called Health Etica Coaching. So this is my little business, my ultra run coaching, nutrition advice, and corporate coaching business. Yeah. Passion, of course. That's the passion.
Yeah,
that's the passion. That's the passion. That's my life, really, to be honest. That's also the lifestyle I lead or have been leading for a while now. So yeah, it just marries up.
And you like to do some wee jogs as well, don't you? Could you like to tell us what's the biggest little jog you've been on, mate?
Yeah, it was a bit of a fight in the end. Yeah, so I ran Coast to Kosciuszko, which is it's quite an iconic ultramarathon in Australia. You have to qualify, so you have to have some sort of a running resume, and then you apply, and then the race directors choose 60 runners, and then usually 52, 53 make it to the start line uninjured and healthy. So the original course is 241 kilometers. So it goes from Eden in New South Wales all the way up to Mount Kosciuszko, and then back down to Charlotte Pass. So Charlotte Pass is your finish line. But when I did it just over 1.5 years ago, the weather up at the top was too bad for us to go all the way up. So we were stopped at 223 kilometers.
Yeah, wow. 223 kilometers. It's interesting. A friend of mine did the 100K, but he got to 93 and he pulled out because of his knee. He reckoned he was going to end up in a crutches or wheelchair or something for a few weeks to recover. And he thought, no thanks. I think it went at like 20Ks or something. He slipped, and he came to me and said, I did a 93K run, and I loved that. I fucking loved that he didn't say I didn't do the 100. So yeah, and the same attitude coming across from you there as well. Absolutely amazing. And of course, I'm playing it down, calling it a wee jog, but we've got to have a laugh, don't we?
Absolutely, it was. It definitely wasn't speedy going. I mean, there is some guys who can kind of run that at some nutter pace, but it's still a run. It's definitely never a sprint. Yeah.
No.
But when it finishes, weather dependent, it's also you kind of you take it on the day, although it would be nice to summit because that's what it's all about. But we took it, and the weather was too bad, so that's okay. Safety first. That just shows how well organized the event is, And I was talking to one of my runners. She ran over the weekend, and she had a similar thing where she pulled out, and for very good reasons, and. And she said she was very smart. She says, look, there's two things after the race. I'd rather be recovering than rehabbing, right? Because we did something that we shouldn't have done. So for your friend not running the last 7K, which can take 2-3 hours depending on the terrain, smart way to pull out, get that knee sorted, and he'll be back to running in no time, you know?
Oh yeah, he is. He's yeah, that's exactly what happened. So just to confirm, 100% correct. And he was really happy that, because 93K run, not your
That's a long way.
was it 223 you did?
Yeah, look, I've also done some milers, so they call them 100 milers, so I've done a couple of them. That's normally a more normal distance. So 100 miles is one of the oldest
Sorry, mate. Can I stop
distances.
you there? Can I just stop you there? 62.5 kilometers would it
Yeah,
be? 100
yeah.
miles? There's nothing normal about that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That is absolutely
I'm,
extraordinary.
I'm talking in the ultra running world. You know, they
Oh yeah,
don't. That's what I meant. Sorry, I didn't want to be
in the
derogatory.
big
Of
boy
course,
world.
it's
No,
not
no.
normal.
I'm
I
just
don't think it's
confirming that
normal.
it's, how impressed I am. Let's dial in to the point of this podcast. I actually asked Mario to come on and help me. As you know, the point in this podcast is to help men and men achieve more in their life, and men, be happier, and men understand their mind and emotions more. And there's something I see a lot, and I was literally having a conversation with somebody before this in a cafe about, a relative of theirs in the same sort of situation, whereas they're overweight and they're trying to lose it, but they can't for whatever reasons. Now, Mario's journey is possibly, you correct me if I'm wrong, but starts at being overweight and then realizing some things and coming around to this magnificent ultra runner that we've already emphasized. I'm literally asking Mario to tell his story and hopefully inspire some men and show them that it's possible, and maybe give the last little tip over the edge that they needed to go and be healthier and enjoy their life more. Which I'll put it over to Mario now to start the story and give us some insights.
Look, I always think it's something that is just, I had to do it. So I definitely don't want to come across as knowing that I don't have the magic pill. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this situation in this world, and I'd be a little bit richer. If I could put what I did in a pill and give it to someone for good money, yeah, unfortunately, that's not how it works, So, yeah, I was about 118, 120 kilos, I would think, at my biggest. And the thing is, you don't realize kind of, and I'm just going back now, how big you are until you see images and pictures of yourself afterwards. So that's what happened to me,
Okay, wow.
So 118.
Oh, 18,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So probably 120. There's a time also you don't go on the scale. You do know there's something not right. And it's not something you do every day. You don't weigh yourself, right? Your sizes just go up, So there was this moment where we lived in the northeast of England. My wife is English, so I moved to England from Switzerland. And we moved to a beautiful area in England, which is called Northumberland. It's on the Scottish border. Beautiful. Yeah, we were like, I don't know, 1 hour and 20 minutes from Edinburgh. So many people in the world might have heard of that city, one of my favorite cities in the world. So yeah, and we were invited to a wedding in Switzerland. My friend got married and I had to get a suit, right? And because as a blue collar guy, I was a service engineer and a mechanical engineer. So I wasn't in a white collar thing, job. So I didn't really have shirts and ties and stuff, So we had to buy one. Anyway, so we entered this shop and it was on a kind of a main road. So we walked into the shop and the first moment of where I'm like, oh, wow, there's something not right is when the lady comes up to us. So the shop owner or whoever worked there, she said, because I was looking at some suits, she said, excuse me, sir, your size is over that end. So over that end meant, right, I was in the normal end where you get from SML to XL or whatever, but then you have the end which is kind of not that normal anymore, apparently. And so that was for me quite a shock moment. So I looked my wife in the eye and she just said, all right, whatever, So I walked over there. So that was the first moment where I'm like, wow, okay. So I wasn't very happy with that because no one has ever said that to me. I've always been in a very positive environment. So again, when I tell this story. This, for me, it might have been a little bit easier than it is for other people. Nobody ever told me I was a big bloke. You know, my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, you know, she loved me the way I was. Big guy, who cares? You know, my friends loved me for who I was. They liked me, my dad, my mom. You know, nobody ever mentioned, mate, what are you doing? You know, I
really
had a very
interesting
unhealthy
point.
life. So I drank a lot, you know, a lot of beers. As a service engineer, you do two things. You work and you sleep. And in between, you do a bit of drinking and eat badly, you know. You make bad decisions all the way, yeah. So back to the shop. I was in the shop and my daughter was running around, and because she was only little and she was very energetic, you know, and we were just doing whatever we had to do in this shop. And then she was running towards the door, you know, and I tried to stop her, but I couldn't because obviously I wasn't really very flexible and my movement was quite bad, you know. So luckily the door was shut because otherwise she would have just run out onto the street, not realizing there's a main road, and could have been hit by a car. So for me, that was the flick of the switch moment, like totally. It's very difficult to explain what I went through there, but it just, my whole life just within, or my whole body just disintegrated in itself. It was just like, you know, I was not able to save my daughter if she would have run out. I wouldn't have been able to catch her. And I wasn't even, you know, I wasn't maybe 32, 33 at the time or whatever it was, you know, I don't know. So that for me was a real shock. So yeah, then I knew, and then I turned around to my wife, and you know, or yeah, she was my wife there, and I'm like, nah, this is not on. I need to do something. And she said, look, let's just get to the wedding and blah blah, and then do whatever you need to do afterwards. So yeah, so I was in a way, nobody pushed me because we spoke about that earlier on before we started recording. It's difficult if everybody around you says, mate, come on. You're not going to do it. It has to be you yourself. That's the only tip I have. It's like you have to do it yourself. It's like you need to say, okay, this is enough. And that was my moment. And since then, you know, I've tried. I mean, this is like 20 years ago now, right? 16, 18, 20 years ago, something like that. And it's just a progression of course, it's taken over my life now. You know, we're not. I'm not going to lie about it, but you go from one extreme to the other, probably. You know? So yeah. So that's the backstory. That's the reason why I started saying to myself, mate, yeah, something has to happen. If you can't even run after a 3 or a 4-year-old.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how, you know, the care and the love you have for your daughter enabled you to give yourself some more care and love? And I really love what you were saying there as well about nobody can tell people what to do, especially men, right? You know, because, you know, especially if you're trying to be a good, proud man and normally you're helping other people, right? It's a vulnerability that I'm learning and getting better and better at. And the way I see it is actually, you know, when you go and listen to somebody else or you go and get help and it might be perceived as weak, as I used to, right? It's actually strength, and you're taking yourself. So you're still in charge. You're still, you know what I mean? Like you have to listen. You have to go and get help from a PT or a professional. If you like, I'm not just talking about weight here. I'm talking about mental health and all the rest of it. And yeah, but the penny really has to drop inside the man first. Yeah, so beautiful message. And that's the point in this, everything that I'm doing, if you want the truth, because I might have heard things 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times before it clicks, you know? And someone clicking on a podcast and listening to the podcast is them helping themselves, because we're not talking directly at them. They are going, you listeners that are listening to this, you have came and clicked on this and you're retrieving the information, you know what I mean? So it's like, you're helping yourself right now by listening to this. That mindset on things for myself has really helped me improve and grow tremendous amounts. Next, Mario, I'd like you to explain. So that's the start, the story, that's the ignition. What happened next? How did you do it? Because that must be really difficult at that. Like, yeah, I'll let you explain.
Look, luckily I used to be a bit fitter than that. You know, I used to play football or soccer or whatever you want to call it in Switzerland, fairly high up. I was never fit. I was lucky enough. I scored a lot of goals, so they couldn't just put me on the bench. They put me on the bench after 60 minutes because I was done and dusted, but usually I scored 1 or 2 goals and that was my job done, you know. But then you
nice.
fast forward a few years, going away, going abroad, installing machinery for many years. You can't do a sport with, you know, you can't do a team sport, you know. So yeah, so that was that downward spiral, of course. And then getting out of that was, yeah, I was staying in hotels a lot, you know. So some of them had a gym. So I got a really big job as a site leader in Liverpool in England, and I knew I was going to be there for at least 3 years. It turned out to be 4. And they had a little mini gym, like a tiny gym, 2 treadmills, couple of machines, maybe a rower, I can't even remember. But they also had a sauna, which was great, you know. So
Yeah,
over
perfect.
time, I built up the confidence to just pop in there, you know. I had some old trainers. They weren't even running shoes. So, and I was in there, and there was a guy on the treadmill. I can't remember how far he ran, but for me, he was like the ultra marathon god, right? This bloke, he was running. He looked fit. He looked the way he, you know, the way he ran. So, so I just started running next to him, and you know there was no judgment or anything, and it was probably a joke, right? And I just said to myself, let's see how far we can get. And I think I got to about a mile, and then my body wanted to die, so I said, okay. But yeah, you know, but I was lucky enough. Correct, yeah, that's right, yeah. My dad was an ultra marathon runner in the 80s when we went back to South Africa at the beginning of 1980, and my dad was always fit, and I always watched the Comrades Marathon, which is the most famous ultra marathon in the world. There's about 18,000 people that take part. It was on the other weekend, about 2 weeks ago. And it's 89 kilometers, and it goes from Durban to Pietermaritzburg, or Port Elizabeth, sorry, and not Pietermaritzburg, and then the other way around. So I was always kind of, I always thought, oh, how good would this be? So there was a little bit of motivation somewhere when I'm like, yeah, let's just see, you know, we're made for it. Body, you know, we need to run. And I used to run. I used to sprint at school. So just over time, not putting too much pressure on me, just running. And then I said to my wife, I got home one week and I said, hey, if I can get to 4 miles on the treadmill, I'm going to buy myself some running shoes. And I did, you know, I remember they were £25. I went to JB Sports or whatever it was, and I got myself some running shoes. And then I started running outside, and luckily, I've never cared what people thought, you know. I grew up in a way where, you know, what other people think about me or us is none of our business, you know. I still believe that. If you think you're doing good, just keep going, you know. It's none of this, you know. There's always going to be judgment from other people. So I didn't care. You know, there was people laughing out of the car and throwing things at me and
Really?
young
Fucking
kids.
hell.
Yeah, they you know, they took the mick because I had to run early morning or in the evening, after work or before work, mostly after work, and people coming home and they had a laugh and a giggle. But that didn't deter me. Then I started listening to music, so I didn't have to listen to that stuff anymore. And you get cut by cars, so you always have to be mindful because it's like obviously what bicycle riders or cyclists probably go through globally, where cars just sometimes are not very smart and they don't realize what they can do, how much damage they can do. They don't need to touch you, but they can scare people off. And it luckily didn't scare me. So yeah, it just took its thing. I was always the first guy in the pub, so this might resonate with people, you know. I love to go to the pub. I still now I love the pub environment. I still think it's a great environment to be in. And I used to go every night on, you know, because that's just what you do. You're a service engineer. What do you do in the evening, you know?
Yeah. When you
Internet
work
was
on
just slowly coming up, and TV is whatever it was, you know. And then I said to the boys, as I had 18 guys working for me, and I says, I'm out of the pub, guys. They just laughed. They're like, yeah, mate, whatever, you know, next week you'll be back. So I said, look, Wednesdays I'll still go, and I'll have a pub meal and a couple of pints, but that's it, you know, no more takeaway for me. So I started going to the local supermarket in England. That's, yeah, we're quite lucky there. You know, you have so many different shops. You know, here we have 2 or 3. Over there, you have about 5 or 6 major. So there's one at every corner. So I just started to eat a bit healthier, drink less. So it was never a matter of eliminating. It's not like smoking. When I stopped smoking, it's a matter of cold turkey. That's it. There's no other way, I believe. But when you want to lose weight and get into a healthier lifestyle, if you start eliminating, you crave it anyway. So I think the best thing is to say, okay, I had 3 or 4 takeaways a week because it was convenient. I put it down to 1. And then I said, I'm only going to have a takeaway if I work over the weekend. I'll treat myself on Sunday night for an Indian. But then your decision making gets better as well, because as you start exercising and sleeping better and all this kind of stuff, people who can read all this stuff, and, I'm not the doctor, professor, know-it-all, but it is what it is. The body subtly says, oh, it stresses a bit. It says, what the hell are you doing with me? Running and all this stuff. What's this, right? Because it gets used to all the sugar and the carbohydrates and all the processed food. And as you eliminate or start to, not eliminate, like I said, but kind of get rid of a few things, it's in a bit of a shock. But get through the usual rule of 21 days, and then it's fun. It's like, we're talking about men, right? And I'm not the youngest bloke out there anymore. I'm turning 54 this year.
If you're buying running shoes for £25 and the internet wasn't a thing, no, I was wondering how old you are when you were saying
there you go. See, it was just coming through. The internet was still slow, and it wasn't what it is now, where it's kind of, you can kind of watch movies and stuff. Where in them days it wasn't that. But the thing is also men like to wear nice clothes, right? Even if they don't admit it. You just mentioned it. We're the manly men and we don't want to open up and seek for help. But as my size reduced, I was proud. I'm like, oh, suddenly only XL, suddenly only L, and all this kind of stuff. And like with women who love nice clothes and sizes that fit nicely, the same goes for men. I can't deny that. It was a good feeling. So you just continue on. I think sometimes one has to just get to a point where it becomes what you do. It's never who you are, right? It's what we do. So I hope this makes sense. It's just kind of, I'm just trying to make it as structured as possible for people to understand.
No, it's really good hearing the story and how you're explaining it. The points you're putting across are really, really good. And so you bought yourself these pair of running shoes for £25 in 1920 or something, and then
21.
And then, so when did you start doing sort of the distances, or did it get easier as the weight came off? Was that how it kind of worked, or enlighten me?
Definitely. So because I still had some fast twitch muscle fibers left from my footballing days, so that was pretty good. So running so I think I ran about 3 times a week, something like that. I measured the distances with my car, so I knew roughly how far I was going. And then there was the first gadgets came on. There was like a Nike pod. You could put it on the shoe, and then you could you could have a receiver on your, so the sender was on your shoe, the receiver was on your nano iPod. So I listened to music and it would just tell me, you have run 1 mile, you have run 2 miles. And you can actually put in how far you go. And then she says, you are halfway. And then you just turn around. And so I knew roughly how far and how fast I went. And then, you meet people as well. They give you some advice. I was installing a machine in the south of England in Kent. The guy who operated the machine after I installed it, he was a runner, and he gave me my first running magazine, Runner's World, very famous, And my first race was actually 10K. I never did a 5K. I don't think I've ever done a 5K until I ran parkrun here in Australia many, many years afterwards. So 10K was my first distance. I did 4 of them. 2 in Scarborough, which is in Yorkshire on the East Coast, and 2 where I lived in Northumberland. That was a proud, The first one, I think I did 56 minutes, and I was really happy, And I went to the pub to watch one of the football games, and I think I had a few pints of Guinness, so all the calories I burnt in that hour were already back in. But I was just so proud,
Deserved it, though.
Sorry?
Deserved it, though. You can say
I loved it. Just so proud.
For sure.
I cycled there. It took me 5 minutes to get there and about 45 minutes to cycle back along the coast. So it was okay. But, just Then I signed up for my first half marathon. That was in Cardiff in Wales. And I was quite happy with the time there as well. I think it was 1:48 or something. And I was kind of like, okay, that's... And then I got this job in Australia as a service manager for the company I was already working for. So I was working for a Swiss company that did print finishing systems and printing presses and things like that. And machines that actually make the book and make the magazines. So I've been in printing all my life. Textile printing first, installing the machinery, and then in paper printing. And so we moved here, and then I signed up for the Sydney Marathon, which was in September. So 2011, I ran my first marathon, and it was one of those moments. It was really hot. 2011 is quite a famous year. It was quite hot. Many people, there was carnage everywhere. I suffered. I mean, I trained myself. I never had a coach. So when I did it, it was like, I'm either going to get through this and I'm never going to run again, or I'm going to get through this and say, all right, bring it on. And fortunately for me, and unfortunately for my family, I took over. I'm like, okay, where can this go? And then the progression is just the normal progression. I was made redundant. So I thought, okay, what do I do? I think a year later or something. And I became a personal trainer. So I was looking for new work, and then I became a personal trainer. I wanted to do an MBA, but it just didn't sit right. So I became a personal trainer, and straight after a running coach. And then I started geeking out on this whole ultra marathon running, and just took it from there, became a wellness coach. So now I'm an ultra running coach as well. Wellness coach. I can give nutrition advice. I'm studying sports endurance nutrition at the moment. So fast forward kind of 20 years in between the first step and now, it's a completely different, probably a completely different person as well, a little bit. Your mindset's completely different. You've still got your own character, but you do have to make a few changes along the way, I think.
When, people are making fun and stuff, I can imagine that being quite tough to deal with. You sound like you have a great mindset on it, but even at that, it must have had some sort of effect and been a bit hurtful and emotional for you.
For me, I have a lot to thank my mum and dad, right? They both grew up in the Swiss mountains, and so they had it tough. They were the oldest out of 5 and 6 siblings. So they had to run the show, right? That's just how it was. We're talking the 40s and 50s here. But they were always fair, and the advice given was always very good, And especially my dad, he was like, if you want something, you need to put the work in and just carry on. Don't look too much left, too much right. And I don't want people to understand this the wrong way, but I see it like, it's like with mindset. There's 2 mindsets, the closed mindset and the open mindset. There's also kind of 2 types of people in this situation that you've just described, Mark. One that then says, okay, stuff it, I'll give up. Everybody around me thinks I'm an idiot. I might as well not do it. For me, it's a complete different. It's the opposite. It's like there's a fire burning, and all that stuff that gets thrown at me are little twigs and logs that are going on that fire, and that fire is never, ever going to go out, ever.
Yeah.
With all the things, all my races I've done, there's been so many people. You? No way. Hold my beer. I love this saying in Australia. Hold my beer.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I love it. It's my favorite saying. Excuse me, what did he say? Hold my beer. Watch this space, whatever people want to say. So I'm lucky I'm that kind of person. If I think it's impossible, then it's difficult. It's going to be really hard for me. But unless someone else says it, nobody knows my body better than me. And when we go to the doctor because we don't feel right, the doctor can't tell us after 10 years of studying how we feel. We know ourselves how we feel. This is why we go to the doctor or seek for help, right? We only ourselves feel what is the potential of what we are capable of doing. And the potential is limitless. A good friend of mine, he's written a book. His name is Jason Dunn. He's writing a second book. Good friend of mine. His book is unlimited. I'm not here to advertise any books and stuff, but if they don't like what I'm saying, it's sometimes good to read a book where it,
No, the rising, my good friend.
So I hope that answers the question, Mark,
Yeah, I think you answered it very well. And I hope it, hits with some of the listeners. Maybe some not, maybe some will, maybe some won't like it. And it's the ones that is the listener is talking to the most, and then the penny might drop one day or not, like whatever. It's all we can do is, tell the story and put it out there. And like you said very well at the start, was this isn't how you do it. This is how you did it. You know what I mean? And that's really important for other people. And I always say this a lot, and it's like, I don't know the answer for anybody myself, but even at that, like, I don't know it. I need to go figure it out. So there's like one bit of advice you can give everybody, and that is go and find out what works best for yourself. Don't listen to me, don't listen to Mario, don't listen to David Goggins. Listen to yourself. Take in all the information that everybody's saying. I can't believe I put myself in the same frame as David Goggins. Anyway, here we are. We're trying. We're at the start, but anyway.
As long as we don't talk about David Goggins, I'm happy. You're
yeah.
You're miles
Okay.
above him, mate. You're miles above him, mate. Don't you worry.
Thank you. Throughout this process, mate, because I do a big thing on a negative self-talk and stuff, but not necessarily negative self-talk, just to clarify the question, just the voice in your head. What's the dialogue with yourself? Because, like you have your true self, your spirit, your energy, whatever you sort of want to call it, and then you have your brain, and you also have your body that's got an intelligence, right? And this is something in science is sort of pretty new that's uncovered about the body having intelligence. It's got like, I think it's a few million neurons compared to the brain has a few billion. These numbers, please nobody quote me on them, but that's roughly what we're looking at. And yeah, but the conversation, I nearly digressed there. The conversation with you and your brain, let's say, how did they go when from the start to, I don't know, now? Give us a bit of an insight.
That's a great question.
Big question, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it comes up when I do a longer race. That usually is a subject of its own, when you're working with the little demons there. But yeah, I think, of course, there's always, the little guys on your shoulder. If you go back to the cartoons, Donald Duck, you have the guy, the devil Donald and the angel Donald. And there's always the one that's like, mate, why are we doing this? You come home from work and you want to, it's much nicer to go to the hotel bar or the bedroom than the gym, right? So these are the conversations I had to have. I think it's a matter of from day one, a lot of endurance athletes will talk about tools and a toolbox or a tool belt or a tool bag, whatever you want to call it. And you fill that bag up and that tool belt or that toolbox with tools. As you learn, it's like, okay, what tool do I use to overcome this, right? Because I'm 6 p.m., 7 p.m., you've just driven in your car and then you've still got a workout to do and you'd rather sit down, have a beer and all this. So these are my first memories of how do I overcome this, where there's always this comfort. But then I soon realized the more uncomfortable I got with things, the more comfortable I got with the uncomfortable things. I'm like, it's a great achievement to overcome something and then say, hey, the funny thing is, nobody says don't go and have that beer. Just earn the bugger. So go to the gym, do whatever, or whatever it was in anybody's case, go for a walk, and then have that drink. It's good for the soul. It's just good for the soul. That beer tastes very good. But you might only have one or two. Whereas if you would have sat there at 6, these were the things the challenges that I had to work with. Because there was no one there telling me, Mario, go to the gym. It's much better. There were so many voices saying, mate, come on. There was like 4 of my mates at the bar, right? Waving, come on. So the temptation was high. And then, of course, over the weekend when you're at home, this is just my story, of course, like we said, I got home most weekends, from work. And there again, it's just you start to build little habits. You say, okay, before I do anything else, I am now going for a run, And, I spoke about this on a podcast that I have, and I'm not going to advertise it here with my friend, Tim Buxton, our mutual friend. And
one sec, Mario. Sorry, 1 sec. Just so everybody knows, I am a bit ill at the minute. I've got all the aches and pains and stuff. I've got the sore hair and things. I'm not coughing and sneezing, thank God. But I'm doing this through the passion of it all because I'm still like, it was never not going to happen. I'm like still doing it. But before, I've just realised that digress from what I was saying about a saying I heard from a friend: the rising tide lifts all boats. And my point was to then allow you, it's one of my pillars of my podcast, whoever comes on gets to promote themselves. I'm not in competition with anybody. We're in this together. So, there's a bigger movement that's much bigger than any of us, and we can only do it together. So please do talk about your podcast, talk about your friend's book, explain all that sort of stuff, and and promote it.
Thank you.
Because that's the point, right? We all
Thank you
can
very
help
much.
each other together, and that's it. I'm not a running coach anyway. Even if you were a life coach, I had my friend Jack on, and there's no competition. It's just, like I said,
I get running coaches on my podcast. So yeah, I've got 2 podcasts. One I run myself. It's called Strides and Vibes. But the one I was talking about is called The 1%ers, which I do with our mutual friend, Tim Buxton. And there we had a 3-point series where we had the motivation part, the drive part, and the finishing part. Because the motivation is, it's a bit emotional. So that means that's what gets you started, hopefully. But if you don't have the drive, that real drive that comes from within you every single day, motivation will fade. Motivation is very emotional. So if you have a bad day, drive still gets you through. Motivation might actually stop you from doing it. But look, I never read a book. I read a couple of magazines, a couple of articles, more about technique and stuff and running. I just, step by step, but I didn't have any big goals. I just said, let's see. And the weight was dropping. That's the thing. Running is still the best thing to do, right? As I was so lucky, that weight was just dropping. I hardly plateaued. It was just like really easy. I didn't have to eliminate too many foods. Of course, I started eating more vegetables, more salads, more that kind of stuff. We all know that, But you still eat a lot, which is fine, but suddenly you eat different foods and the body gets the nutrition it needs. It gives you the energy. I was better at work. I was friendlier at home. I was just a better person. And then suddenly these things just fall into place and you just don't want to stop. You get addicted. And probably other people have other experiences, but this is what I got through. I mean, now it's tough. I mean, now we're talking the 1% now, right? How am I going to get better and faster and whatever it is and leaner and cleaner? And, I'm at the limit on a few things now because I'm like, okay, there's not much more I can do. I've gone plant-based as well a few years ago just to be even. I'm not saying cleaner. That's not necessarily always the case because you can be vegan and still not be healthy. That's clear. I'm not doing it. I'm doing it because a lot of times people just look at how much work they can put into something, but people forget the recovery part. I always bring up the example and look, Olympics. I think the guy who wins the Olympic medal is the guy who trained harder maybe or trained more because they all train hard. But the one who recovers fastest to then go again in training, that's the person that's probably going to go all the way and get to the podium or whatever. And this is what people sometimes forget. Recovery is the most important part. That's when we recover. That's when the muscles get rebuilt. That's when, that's a complete different podcast. But recovery is key and people forget that. Once we start pushing ourselves, it doesn't matter what it is. Projects at work. I mean, you have a physical job, you're on site. It's cold now. You're outside. You're burning through more energy, more calories. People don't realize that when it's cold. I'm just using winter as an example here in the eastern parts of Australia. I know you're in Brisbane at the moment. It might be a little bit warmer up there, but
it's much better.
Yeah, as the body wants to heat up, we burn energy, and people forget maybe we need to eat more in winter. Why are foods where we come from not heavier in winter, but kind of more nutritious? We focus on soups and stews and thousands of years ago, they already realized that, the body is burning through
it's a
more
really good
energy,
point,
so we need to adapt. Why are the meals lighter in summer? Perhaps we need to hydrate more, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm definitely not trying to step onto anybody's toes, but that's just my experience.
No, I really appreciate the insights. Next, I'd like to talk about getting a message across to any man who's trying. to not necessarily go on your journey, but just to get on his journey and get to where he wants to be. First, I'd like to ask, how has it changed your life from when you were overweight? There's a couple of questions in there, but to now when you're more fit and focused, how has it affected other aspects of your life, like relationships, confidence, career, and these sort of things? If you could give us some insight on that, would be fantastic.
I mean, I'll start with what my wife always tells me. Sometimes she says, when you were just chubby and stuff, you were a lot calmer. I don't think she means nicer or not nicer, but she just says, look, there was like, because now I've got that much energy, or I think I have anyway.
Yeah, you do.
Or more energy, that I just want to do everything. Fingers are in every pie and this, that, and the other, running, you're doing a day job, being there for my athletes, building a small business and so on. Yeah, that might be a change where you do get a little bit. I've never checked if I'm type A or not, but I probably am. And then there's also a little bit of Swiss blood in there where everything has to be kind of perfect in most ways. So I think that might be something that people need to be aware of, that you are going through a few of these changes. But then on the other hand, there's a lot of positives where.
Okay, mate. So just so some other men who might be trying to lose weight and are struggling with it, or they've been wrestling with it and they've tried, like I know myself, there's a few times that I've tried to, improve my health and stuff. Something that would have helped me if I knew how it feels now, it would have been a better insight. So what other areas of your life has it, what's been the effects, and how has it improved, and things like this, and relationship, confidence, career, and whatever you would like to give us some insights on, please go ahead.
Definitely, yeah. There's two sides to this. I have to be honest, which obviously I always am. I think it's the best way to go.
For sure.
My wife sometimes says, look, when you were like chubby and stuff, it was like life was a little bit easier, perhaps. Now I've got a few goals and I'm trying to get everything right, and food has to be right. And I do try and live like a 90-10 ratio where 90% is kind of clean and healthy, and 10%, you have to live and it's good for the soul. That's definitely, I've eliminated a lot of things, but not everything. So there's still a few fun things left. And then on the actual reality side is, it's once you know how good it is, you don't really want to go back. So that's point number one. In terms of relationships and the network you're in, suddenly you're surrounding yourself with a complete different bunch of people. It's hard to stay kind of in the same environment. You have to get out. Nobody says give up on that. It depends on how people respond. My best friends in Switzerland and people I grew up with, and we're still best friends, right? But when we go out now, because we're not 25 anymore, we're not throwing it down our neck like we used to. But I think that goes for everybody. Other things are important now. Now we sit down and have different conversations. So I think the conversation has to be with the people that you surround yourself with. And we need to also be mindful that we don't want to be an evangelist just because we now did something. Of course, we can be proud. Of course, confidence is higher. I remember when I ran my first 100K a few years ago, 2015 or 2016, I went back to work on the Monday. We had a problem or whatever it was. And I'm like, that's not a problem. If you're in the middle of the Blue Mountains after 78 Ks and it's pitch black and you hardly know which direction you go and you deplete and you don't know what's next, that's a problem to solve. What we have on our table here Monday morning is easy to solve. So it puts things into relation with one another, and it also relativates things. Things are sadly relative. They're not as big a deal as they used to be. And if you have a little bit more energy, you're also able to handle a little bit more stress. I'm not saying go and seek stress, definitely not. But things just it's solvable suddenly,
Positive stress,
Yeah.
You go and seek stress, and get used to handling stress. I think you've hit the nail on the head and a really good point there, actually. If you go and put yourself in stressful situations that then you calm down and recover from and actually get benefits from when the stressful situations pop up in life that you don't ask for, you're prepared and you're trained, and you can maybe even, get excited like I did. I remember during my therapy, I actually thought there was possibly something wrong with me. Not that there's anything wrong with anybody, but yeah, just some adjustments to be made. That was literally the thought process I had, because I got anxious. Sort of these terrible feelings were gripping a hold of me, and I got excited at the same time, because I knew there was like an epiphany moment and a moment of growth and something that I would discover on the other side of the adversity. Adversity is a privilege, as they say. I was like, am I getting this weird addiction to, like adversity? I was like, oh, that's potentially not very good. But that's the only time that's happened. I wish it would happen more, actually, because fuck me, how much easier would life be if every time it got shit, you got excited? But yeah, that was a really interesting one, and I liked how you sort of touched on that and set that up there. If you could send a message out to men who are interested or wanting to try something to help inspire them, something you could write on a big billboard, the ones next to the motorway, what would it be?
Get up, right? I think it's three things, right? It has to be simple, basic. Don't join a gym, don't ring a gym. I have nothing against gyms, absolutely not. I go to the gym very often. I love the gym, right? It has to fit in. But first and foremost, get up in the morning early, right? And then make your bed, have a glass of water, and go for a walk. And do that for 21 days and see what happens to your body. So the walk hasn't got anything to do with fitness. It's just walk, mental. Don't take your phone. Don't take your don't. You can listen to this podcast. That's the only thing you're allowed to do on that walk.
And yours, mate, and
Absolutely.
yours.
Mine might get, I don't know how excited people get, but no, I think in all seriousness, and it doesn't actually matter what the three things are. It's actually, we've already ticked 3 boxes, and that gives us the confidence. Hey, I've already done 3 things. How many memes do we see about, I'm obviously connected with a lot of running things where people, you see people walk in the office like this. Oh, guess who's already gone for a run this morning? Or guess who's already been to the gym this morning? Or whatever it is, right? I think start the day in a positive way. Don't procrastinate. And there's no better time than now. And there's a lot of these things. I mean, I work with people, right, getting themselves onto that kind of, and I wouldn't call it a level, it's kind of that next step. The most important step is the next step, right? And this is something that we need to remember. So that, again, there's no magic pill. Start small, make it a habit. It's not who you are, it's what you do that shapes you, and then you carry on. But you need to do it for 21 days. I'm not a scientist, but this has been proven in so many ways that once you do something for 21 days, you can then put things on. I mean, you can already start doing other things, twice a week. You say, okay, I'm going to do another walk in the evening, or walk to the bus stop as opposed to taking the car to the bus stop, or I don't know. There's so many ways. I mean, I don't mind people reaching out for just general advice, how to get started. This is something that I do as well, and there's nothing attached. So there's no strings attached to what I do. I do things in a very holistic way. I understand people's lives are busy, although I'm not a fan of the word busy. I like to be occupied with a purpose. Yeah. Do we need to work 8 hours to the minute every single day, or are we allowed to have half an hour of thinking time to then be really good at the work we do, So there's so many things. I mean, this is opening up I'm sorry. There is so many things we can do to kind of, I've tried, failed on the horse, off the horse, on the horse again, got a kick on the way up and one down and on the horse again. And I don't even know how to ride a horse, but I don't know. I still don't.
Horses. I like that point you're making, though. The point of, like you failed and then you got on the back on the horse and whatever. and I can't horse ride either, but I do exactly the same thing. For me, it's the purpose, right? The whole point, the passion. Is that the same for you? That's how you managed to, get on the running horse and fall off it and
Yeah,
keep
I
going
love
and
it.
stuff?
Will I ever win anything? Probably not. I've got a few age groups here and there, and I don't care. I like just finishing something long and hard and something that scares me. And yeah, in my case now, it's getting a really little bit silly when it comes to the distances and stuff. But I just love the feeling of accomplishment. And, every morning I go for a run, most mornings, 6 days a week. Do I feel great when I start? Probably not. But when I finish, it's like, yeah, there's another one done in the bag. I feel great. There's a thing called runner's high. One does get that. I do a lot of riding as well on the bike. I don't get a cycling high. There's definitely a runner's high. There is something to do with the endorphins and what happens in our body, because it's just the most natural thing to do, because we've always run away from something or we've run after something. We needed to eat. Yeah, we were foraging until we got a bit of meat, but until we caught something. The human is the only animal that can run longer distance. There's no other animal that can run as far as we could. We can outrun
Yeah,
any animal.
I heard this the other day actually, and it was one of those things when you're like, but yeah, okay, of course. Like over a course of a day or several days, we are unbeatable.
That's what we did. That's how we hunted animals. So people who say, "Oh, we're meat eaters" and all this kind of stuff, absolutely. But until we had a piece of meat, we had to live as well. So we had to forage and eat mushrooms and berries and nuts and seeds and whatever land gave us until we caught the animal, and then we had a big feast. Right? That was basically how things went on. So we had to be quick to run away from the saber-toothed tiger, but then we have that endurance where we can actually run an animal down and tire it out. The ones we wanted to eat, the ones that hunted us are usually quite quick, so that's why we had to get some weapons sorted, to defend ourselves and all this, and invented fire and for warmth and protection and all these kind of things. I'm not a historian, of course, but basically
Sounds like you were
that's how
there.
it worked. Yeah, look, I sometimes act like I was there. I love the great outdoors, Mark. So yeah, Look,
Okay, my friend, you've told us
absolutely.
a lot.
Simple
Go
things
ahead.
are the best. Yeah, get a habit and done. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You've told us a lot about your passion and your journey. Tell us some more about your coaching, but let me explain first. Actually, it was 8 days ago, wasn't it? We met on the Monday and you did a running assessment with myself and give me some tips and pointers, and you're very, very good at being real. Because I've got a half marathon in like 2 weeks or something, and you're like, there's no point in reconstructing your running. We can do that after. You may as well just have these little pointers. Here you go, blah, blah, blah. And this is going to help you. And it has helped tremendously, no end. So your links to your coaching business and stuff will be in the show notes. If anybody's interested in getting in touch, you mentioned how to get started as well. At the start of that, I also have a workbook. If someone comes to me willing to, how do I get started? How do I get this passion that we're both talking about? And I have a process for that. I'm not going to go into details because it's, like you said before, different podcasts. So tell us more about the business you're doing now.
So I specialize in every distance from 800 meters to God knows whatever people want to do. Right? There's 200 milers out there, multi-day events, and so on. So my biggest specialty would be ultra marathons, trail running. That's where I've got the most experience as well. But I have some juniors as well that I train for 800 meters and 1500 meters on the track. The main thing for me is I coach humans and I see everybody as an individual. That's very important to me. I know everybody says that, but for me, it's not about the running program. For me, it's about a journey I take with this person. And over time, we get to know one another as well, which is good. That helps the coaching. So coaching basically that's my passion. I coach at work. I coach in my private life. I've always coached and trained and mentored. And for me, this is very important. But anybody can do it. I work with any ability. If someone wants to be an Olympian and they've got it, then we start working together. Not a problem. if someone just wants to get off the couch and work towards their first park run, we do that. Not a problem. Everything's individualized. For me, that's very important. That every session I coach, it's about the runner. It's all about the runner, how they feel. For me, this is important. So I just really love it. I get more nervous with one of my runners running than when I run, you know.
Wow, I love that. And it was like my, what would you call it? His great cousin. It was my mother's cousin. Yeah, my mother's auntie's daughter. She's the dancing spine. She's like a yoga guru. And yeah, she spent like time in really fascinating women. She spent time in Sri Lanka when the government were bombing the rebels, and she was translating for the rebels, and the government were telling them where they're going to shell, and they used to tell them the other town. So to go to the other town and they'd actually shell that one, knowing that they would be there because they told them to go. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So she would be in the bunker, and really fascinating. But she can bend over backwards and grab her back of her Achilles heels, you know. But she just with yoga and stuff, just stuff that pours out of her. And I was talking about at the time, I just got to Australia. It's just like 9 years ago, 9 and a bit. And I was talking about how passionate I was about my work when I was an electrician back home, because I really loved bringing out the best in people and all the rest of it. I had a team of like, it was 15 or something, 14 on one site, and then I had a sort of responsibilities on another Welsh site that was like 3, something like that. Not that it's important, but I really loved, you know, the apprentices, bring them up, because I had more apprentices than I did qualified guys, you know, all at different levels, and you know, like telling them that you go and do this and figure that out, and bringing out the confidence in them was really one of the most fun things to do. But it was like when you are passionate about something, she said, the information just pours out of you. And I loved that saying because I'd never made that connection before, but it was relatable to myself. And it's directly relatable from experience to yourself, and the way you're so passionate about the running and the healthy side and all the benefits from it. Yeah, I'd highly recommend you to anybody who's looking to get started or go and win some mega event. I don't know, you tell me about the good events, but you can clearly tell I'm not a runner. But yeah, Sydney Marathon or something like this for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'll put all your stuff in the show notes. The 1%ers as well. Is that's more commercial, is it? Or
not really? It's just where we want to work with sports teams, but it's a bit to do with running as well, of course, because I got Tim to run now. So that's one thing. And then obviously my podcast is to do, the link is always going to be running, but the person I get on is not on because they're a runner. They're on because they do something else, but they're also a runner. So
yeah,
they're
okay.
in there. Yeah, so I've had Dr. Alessia on, podiatrist, obviously related to running. Then I've had a health coach on who runs. Then I had a sales coach on who runs. I've got all sorts of people lined up now. They're all a coach or something they give in the health sphere or whatever. Correct? Life coach, exactly. So this is the thing. So we'll reverse this as well and get you on. But yeah, the connection is of course running, but they're not coming on because they're a runner. Because otherwise it becomes a running podcast, right?
Yeah, I think there's enough of them as well.
Correct.
I'll put your podcast in the show notes, like I say before, the rising tide lifts all boats. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Thank you so
I'll
much.
spread the word with that. And we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, guys, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Please do leave a comment, tell us what you think, and also give us a review. It helps me no end. Also share with your friends. The point in this podcast is to empower men to positively transform their own lives, and I can't do that by myself. So yeah, please, if you're listening and you want to help out, you know, give a review, share it with your mates. That's probably the biggest thing to get more people involved and listening. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you next month.